אפשר להשם צדיקים יבואו גבול.
These are the words that Moshe spoke. Ele hadvarim asher diber Moshe. The title of the book Devarim springs from this verse, and Midrash teaches us that the word Devarim, which means words, can be read as Dvorim, which means bees. Just as bee honey is sweet, but their stings are sharp, so is our holy Torah. Its words can heal, but they also can hurt. The speech of Moshe contains both of these qualities. He first blesses the children of Israel, saying, May Lord, the God of your ancestors, increase your numbers 1,000-fold and bless you as promised. But then he rebukes them for the sin of the spies who discouraged people from entering the promised land. I said to you, have no dread or fear for them. None other than your God who goes before you will fight for you, just as God did for you in Egypt before your very eyes. Yet for all that, you have no faith in your God. Moshe condemns the Israelites for cowardice and lack of trust in God that led to their failure, both physical and spiritual. The sin of spies is one of our greatest defeats of all time. So great is the importance of this event that it is said in the Mishnah that sin of the spies occurred at no other date than Tisha B'Av. On that occasion, God decided that that day would be a day of tragedy and mourning forever after. The Midrash recalls that when the people heard the spies' report, they lost their will to conquer the promised land, and they cried all night long. Says the Midrash, the Holy One, blessed be He, said to people, you cried needlessly that night, and I will therefore establish for you a true tragedy over which there will be weeping in future generations. The essence of the sin of spies is pretty straightforward. Israelites cried, demonstrating a lack of faith in God. But one thing in the story always kind of bothered me. The spies were sent to scout the land, and I quote, and see what kind of country it is. Are the people who dwell in it strong or weak, few or many? Is the country in which they dwell good or bad? Are the towns they live in open or fortified? So isn't the nature of such a mission imply that the report might be negative? Isn't that the purpose of scouting, to bring a report that would also include potential dangers? Because if people were ought to trust in God only, why send scouts at all? Just go there relying on God the same way you left Egypt. Nobody sent scouts to investigate the wilderness. And Josie Wolf, in the book The Torah, Women's Commentary, says the following in this regard. I question not only the nature of their sin, but also Moshe's approach to their mission. Moshe's instruction divided the world into either-or categories that ignore the nuances within a complex reality. And it says, are the people who dwell strong or weak, few or many? Instead of asking such specific question, what if he had said to them, when you return, tell us what you see. How did you experience this new place? What was the land like? How were the people? Perhaps these kinds of open-ended questions would have led the scouts to bring back a different report. At least these sorts of instructions might have given them more room to develop their own stories in a less dualistic fashion. The scouts might have been inspired to bring back a different description of what they saw. Such is the power of words. Phrased differently, they could have changed the entire story. Or perhaps this is just a matter of perspective of the spies. After all, Yehoshua ben Nun and Caleb ben Yefuneh came back with a different report. The pessimistic 10 scouts observed the promised land and interpreted the bad aspects of it as a permanent and constant feature. In contrast to them, the optimistic scouts, Yehoshua and Caleb, observed the same difficulties but interpreted them as temporary obstacles that could be overcome. So how does that connect to Tisha B'Av? Perhaps the message is that the destruction of the temple is also not permanent, and we should not give in into the despair, though we observe objective difficulties, as the spies did. The words of Moshe rebuking the Israelites for the absence of trust in God are directed to us, not less than our ancestors. Pay attention to the words of Moshe. And they, spies, gave us this report. It is a good land that our God is giving us. Yet you, says Moshe, refused to go up and flouted the command of your God. Who is you in this verse? Moshe is talking to the next generation in the wilderness. Their parents who witnessed the event, the story of spies 38 years ago, have passed away. So why does Moshe say, you refuse to go up? That is because the words of Moshe, Elech HaDvarim, are addressed to us here and today. We are reminded that on Tisha B'Av, when we cry about the temple, we mourn its past, but not its future. When it seems to us that the task is too great for us, or the journey we embark on is too difficult, or the goal that we want to achieve is beyond our reach, Moshe is rebuking us for the lack of courage and faith. That doesn't mean that we should recklessly plunge into the unknown. We better first send some scouts. But we also should remember that our strength is greater than us, that it has divine source. Sometimes it feels like the troubles of this world are never ending when we see what's happening in Israel, in Ukraine and Armenia, Azerbaijan, in Turkey and Syria and Kosovo and Serbia. We might think that the peace will never come, but the Torah says in Psalms, God gives strength to his people. God blesses his people with peace. Though sometimes it feels like there will never be peace in our world, we should not repeat the sin of spies. We should not lose hope. And then maybe these words of Moshe will be fulfilled. Elech HaDvarim, may Lord the God of your ancestors increase your numbers 1,000-fold and bless you as promised. And let us say, Amen.